welcome back. It is day 2, Thursday 2 of doing this Therapeutic Thursday stream. Let's see. I don't wonder if I should keep the camera there, but it's a little too late now. So yeah, just another introduction slash disclaimer. I'm gonna keep this pretty much the same at the start of every video. So if you've been here before, it might sound a little redundant. Oh well. My name is Eric Schneider. I am a psychology student working to get to my master's, to get MFT license, marriage family therapy. That will be my main focus in the professional field. I will still take on general patients if possible, but through that I've learned a small amount in the realm of what's out there, of mental health, just overall, certain disorders, relationship things, mindsets, and just a multitude of other things that I can't think of on the top of my head right now. And the main purpose of this is not therapy in the professional sense. It's not meant as a tool to supplement that. If you do have some sort of true trauma or anything like that you're going through, a mental illness, disorder, anything like that, you should still seek real therapy from a licensed therapist. Anything I express on here is just information. Theoretically, you can look up online yourself, peer-reviewed articles, journals, meta-analysis, experience from my own personal life, whether it's observational or internal. And again, the main purpose of this is kind of a open forum or closed. If you're a viewer and you have a question, whether this be on YouTube or live with the Twitch streams, if you have a question, a concern, something that's going on in your life that you just want to be talked out, then ask it. You can disclose it via Twitch, a YouTube comment, or a private Twitch DM. I don't know if YouTube has private DMs, but it can be private as well if you want to keep it anonymous, which Twitch names allow. You're already kind of anonymous. And then you can choose if you would just like my opinion. And I am hesitant to say advice because I'm not here to give protocols or treatments or diagnosis or anything in that realm, but we'll just say my opinion on it. Or you can choose to leave it as an open discussion, and viewers in the chat, in the live streams, we can all discuss it, bounce around ideas, talk about experiences relative to the question. The idea is this is just a open space, a free space, judgment free. Any like slanderous comments, if they're towards me, I don't care. Slander me all you want, that has zero effect on me. But anybody with a question or that's going through something and is brave enough to express that in this style, any type of slanderous anything towards them will not be tolerated. That's not what this space is about. There can be healthy criticism. There can be discussion again of ideas, and ideas can conflict. So it's not like a any little offense, but it's the derogatory remarks of like, oh, you're a baby, oh this, get over it, oh, just change. It's not that simple, and it's not an environment for those type of comments. Let's see. I'll probably reiterate this in the middle of the stream and definitely in the kind of outro of the stream. But yeah, it's just supposed to be kind of a free space to talk, air things out. You know, one of the best things in therapy, actual therapy, but you know, is just free association. You know, sometimes just talking about your problems out loud can either A, lead you to your own kind of train and conclusions that can be uplifting, or just talking it out, just venting it. You know, people internalize so much, and you know, whether you're high intellect, low intellect, whatever, you know, people have this, I'm hesitant to say arrogance, but this confidence in themselves of like, well, I've thought about the issue, I've internalized the issue, therefore I know it exists, and therefore I'm over it. Like I can think about it. Yeah, it didn't invoke any emotion, so I must be over it. I'm fine. And that's just not the case. There is plenty of research that does talk about verbalizing, discussing, just even if it's to yourself in the mirror, you know, actually having a full train of thought about your experience, your trauma, your emotions, something that's bothering you, is way more beneficial than just, I thought about it, you know, the philosopher way. I thought about the question, I don't need to answer it. Which you don't always need to answer it, but just thinking about it, your brain will work things out subconsciously, but there's still a lot more work that needs to be done. But that's the whole purpose, the kind of unorganized, currently, intro to this, and what I am about, what this portion of my stream and YouTube channel is going to be about. So I appreciate anybody watching. If there's any information that I do speak on that is found to be inaccurate, feel free to let me know about the inaccuracy. I mean, I'm still a student. I'll always be a student, even when I get my license, and potentially PsyD or PhD. We'll see. I'm always going to be a student. Everybody should always be a student of their field. But I by no means believe that anything I say on here is the end all be all or the conclusion or anything like that. Humans are unique. Everybody has their own styles, their own ways of interpreting information, and dissecting information, all that kind of stuff. So if there is something that is factually untrue, then I want to learn too. So feel free, comment it, discuss it. Ideally, if you want to, you know, have a correction or criticism, it's better founded if you also provide your source of information. I will happily go over and read that source of information, and see if there are corresponding articles, journals, research that also says the same thing. Because one thing we should all know about research is you have to see who it's funded by, you have to see what its goal and its intent is. So while you might be able to find one contradictory article, if there's a plethora of other data that all says something else, I'm probably going to go with that. The only thing that would sway me would be, since we are advancing in technology a lot, if it is a brand new article with like just somehow the science behind it is just irrefutable, then I might wait and see. if further research is done. But anyways, I digress on that. Today, since I need topics to discuss myself until I get more of a viewer base, more of people in chat, viewers talking, giving me discussion topics, giving us discussion topics. Until that point, I will just have to lecture. Unqualified lectures. So that's where we're at the moment. So today, until again there is reciprocal banter or anything like that, discourse, I want to focus on very surface level, but perception versus reality, and how you can get out of a funk. Again, I'm not necessarily prescribing any protocol, anything like that. It's just things that people smarter than me, aka like Andrew Huberman, and other psychiatrists, neuroscientists, the guests he has on, stuff like that, that they have expressed. Healthy Gamer, that's a popular one on like the gaming platforms, Twitch, YouTube, stuff like that. It's just things that I have taken from them slash researched on my own through school. But you know, how to get out of a funk, recognizing it, internalizing it, externalizing it, you know, actions. But first, we will just start with my thoughts, opinions, the research that I have conducted I've read on perception versus reality. I'm just going to briefly talk about it, maybe. I do tend to go on tangents about psychology topics, mind, brain, neurochemistry, that kind of stuff. But so when it comes to perception versus reality, I always think that there's a good basis, or there's good reason to always start at the base, at the ground level of what these things are. And you know, perception, again, there's nuance, but perception is basically going to be, you know, how how you perceive the world, how you perceive other people's actions, other people's statements, their intents. That's how you perceive these things. The reality is what is actually there, and a lot of times perception doesn't result or doesn't equate to reality. So you have to, you know, a lot of people get into these funks. They get into aggressive tendencies or self-deprecating tendencies, depression, stuff like that, because of their perception versus what the reality of the situation was. And your perception on things can be swayed by so many other factors that have nothing to do with what you are perceiving. There's it's like on Audible, great courses, just like 24 hours of lectures on psychology and the fundamentals of psychology. And I love how it got broken down at the beginning, because it talks about the history and stuff like that, which, you know, it's great to know where things came from, but you know, I'm more about the relevancy of how is it applicable now. But at a point, he breaks it down first to your senses, because to first understand how you are perceiving things, what your extrinsic perception would be and how you internalize it, you have to understand the instruments that allow you to perceive. Your eyes, your taste, your touch, your senses, hearing, all of that. And just those factors alone can make the same situations perceived differently by other people. You could have different amounts of rods in your eyes that allow you to perceive colors in slightly more vivid or more dull or colorblind ways. So just the visual representation of what you're seeing could be completely or minutely different than somebody else who is in the same exact situation or same exact like next to you. The same thing is true with hearing. I need to brush up on the exact what was said exactly, but a rough interpretation is, I don't remember if it's fluid based or whatever, but your hearing can pick up different vibration levels based off of the structure of your eardrum and how much fluid there is, how hollow the canal is, how narrow it is. All of those factors play. So I might also hear something differently than someone next to me. And it's not just about volume. Like if someone's like, partially deaf, like, yeah, I might hear more clearly, but I mean actual like tone, vibration, inflection. I might pick up on more nuanced inflections, and one person might think, oh, that person was very genuine when they spoke, but then I personally heard some inflections in certain ways that I interpreted as sarcasm. I'm like, I mean, if that's what you want to believe, but they were pretty sarcastic to me. That's another level that you have to understand. They're doing like lawn work, of course, during this time, so that's fun. But you have to understand those foundations first. People will taste things, they'll smell things differently, they'll hear things literally differently than you might. So somebody else might also, and you could interpret these things based off of your background in a different way. A big criticism about other countries or the languages trying to learn English is our sarcasm, right? We put different inflections on things. We'd be like, oh yeah, I love you, all right, and that could actually mean like I love you, but I hate you. But in a lot more of the like literal countries, there's gonna be like, oh yeah, he loves me. He said it in a weird way, but he loves me, or she loves me. But in reality, it was maybe said in a sarcastic manner, a throwaway manner, things like that. So just that alone, you might interpret things differently. If you go to a lot of Asian cultures, from what I've seen and observed, I've been to India, if that's any comparison. I mean, it's clearly Asia, but they're a lot more direct. They don't mean things in a, well, they could, but they typically don't mean things in a disrespectful way. It's just matter of fact. It's, I was in India with my girlfriend. She's Jewish, but she's her like heritage or lineage is Polish. And we were in India, and a group came up to us and was like, "Oh, hey, Jew, Jerusalem." She was like, "Oh, no, I'm American, but my heritage is from Poland." They're like, "No. I see you, Jerusalem. I have many Jerusalem friends. Jerusalem." And it's like, we laughed about it. But they have a different way of expressing and talking. Where in America, if someone were to say that possibly to the wrong person or whatever, they might get really offended and really upset and cause an unnecessary, ordeal. So again, you have to understand societal norms, and as well as just basic senses and perception. Now, to me, one of the most profound things that I heard / learned in psychology was like I don't remember if it was introduction to one of my courses, like the first chapter of a book. I don't remember, but it said perception is more important than reality. And it could be used as a throwaway sentence of like, oh yeah, duh, but like actually breaking that down allows you to really start breaking down and understanding what's going on with interpretations and allowing you to also give more grace to people, maybe more grace or understanding to yourself. There's been times like I personally believe myself to be a pretty level-headed, nice, like, individual. So it seems left field if I hear someone or I like heard from someone else that someone said that I'm a dick, or I'm rude, or I'm mean, or I'm arrogant, conceited. And I think everybody to a certain extent everybody has the capability, but everybody has those tendencies. Sometimes you might say something that other people will be like, oh, that's arrogant, but you don't mean it in that way, it just came off that way to them. And initially when I would hear stuff like that, I believe I have a healthy balance of not caring what other people think when it's irrelevant to who I believe myself to be. But sometimes, every now and then, if someone kind of attacks my character, and technically that's not an attack, like if their view is I'm a dick, that's not really an attack, that's just their opinion, that's their criticism. But I'm human. Every now and then I hear that and I'll be like, I'm not a dick. Like, why would they say that? Like, at least, if it's a facade or not, I try to present myself as respectful and someone who is warming and welcoming and willing to talk to all walks of life. So when I hear something like that, since that's something I pride myself in, I'm like, whoa. And it kind of like, whether it hurts me or it angers me, whatever the case, but there's an emotion there. And just analyzing the statement, perception is more important than reality, to an individual, I'm sure is that nuance. Helped me realize, like, maybe 95% of the time I am that person, but every now and then I might be hungry, or I've been a waiter for 15 years. Like, maybe a table did something that really upset me, and a trainee who's new felt like, oh, he looks like a nice person, I need to ask for help. But my mind is in a busy state, a frustrated state. I'm distracted. So someone might have asked me a question, and my normal response was like, oh yeah, well, if you go over there, blah blah blah, or like, let me just show you, blah blah blah. But I might have been like, it's over there, just like, it's right there. And I'm not saying that's a nice thing to do or whatever, but like, it could have just been a throwaway thing of me just trying to, like, I need to answer this so I can keep focused. And that is their first interaction with me. So the reality, at least what I believe it to be, the reality is, yeah, I'm typically a nice person. I'm you know, I like to educate. I like to help people. I've always been a trainer or a leader at whatever job I do, and I like doing that. So the reality, at least in my eyes, is that's who I am overall. But her first impression, she doesn't know any of that. She has no idea about any of that. Her first impression of me was being a dick. So her perception, which creates her reality of me, is I'm a dick. And it's harder to change a first impression than it is to make one, but it can still be done. So the main purpose of me talking about that is, understand that people might say things about you that aren't true, or that's not who you want to be. And you have to understand that, it's a nice way to think, that most people aren't doing things to intentionally hurt you. And most people aren't doing things to even unintentionally hurt you. If you take hurt from them, mostly if they're irrelevant to your life or have no great importance to your life, most of the time people aren't actively attacking people for no reason. There's anomalies, there's outliers, of course, but overall that's not the case. So living like in your own headspace where every negative thing that you perceive it as an attack on you can be very, very draining, and it can lead to both, or anger, depression, self-doubt, losing self-value, self-worth. It can turn you into a more, which is healthy to an extent, but self-monitored person, where you always have to think about what to say, which is smart. But it makes you feel less like natural in an environment sometimes where you're afraid to speak your mind because you're afraid of repercussion. You are not open for criticism or open for discussions. It closes you off a little bit. Or with the high self-monitoring, a typical attribute to that is which I'm a high self-monitor, so I don't like to think of it this way, but by most standards, if you're a high self-monitor, you're almost never truly yourself, because you're always trying to adapt or be the person that fits the situation or environment that you're in. Which, to low self-monitors, they might view that as just be yourself. Like, you're never yourself. You're always whoever you're around, which, I mean, I don't necessarily view it as a bad thing. I think there's moderation in everything, for the most part, except fentanyl. Don't do that. No moderation. But no, on a serious note, it's all about moderation, right? Like, you should have a good, healthy balance of high self-monitoring in certain regards and low self-monitoring. Like, you should be able to be yourself freely, but understand, be yourself. I don't know, it's a contradiction, paradox of, like, be yourself, but in a not restricted, but a trying to think of the word, but in a conscientious way, right? Like, understand when there's a situation that being true to yourself, being who you are, isn't always the best situation, depending on what outcome you're trying to achieve. You know, if I'm typically a very nervous, shy, unconfident person, or I'm going on job interviews, you know, myself naturally is soft-spoken. I might just like talk like this, and you know, yeah, I'm pretty good at that job. Or you know, I went to school and I did okay. That eventually might get you a job, but overall, you have to understand about yourself, like, this me, who I am, isn't going to land me this job. So I need to take a deep breath and try my hardest. It's not easy to do. You can't just flip the switch. Like, most people aren't nervous, shy, unconfident because they want to be. So I'm not trying to say this as like, oh yeah, just do it. But you know, practice in a mirror, practice with your friend, practice until you have gotten the cognitive benefit, cognitive dissonance of like, I am this confident person. So when you go into that job interview, you're like, oh, I was the lead in this portion, or you know, in school I did this, blah blah blah, I did this, I would be a valuable asset because of this, da 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 da, whatever the case may be. So kind of revert back to the perception versus reality. You know, high self-monitors might take a lot more offense to things, because they're, especially if they're high self-monitors in a negative state, like mental state, because they're always interpreting what people do. Well, typically they're interpreting the actions of everybody else around them and how it's affecting them and how they should respond to it. So they're internalizing a lot more. You know, self-monitors are internal. Low self-monitors are typically external. They're just themselves. They care. You know, I'm not saying they're narcissists who don't care how they affect other people, but they're like, I am who I am. Like, you know, take me for what I am, and I'm just going to be that. So, you know, breaking down the foundations of that perception versus reality, I think is a healthy first step as to understanding where you are yourself mentally. And always try to be consciously asking yourself, like, did this person say or do what I think they did? Like, truly? Or am I reading into the situation wrong? You know, another thing you can do if you're not necessarily afraid of confrontation, not that it will lead to confrontation even half the time, but if you have a question about how they meant their statement, just ask them. Like, we do this as, you know, an experience from, you know, people overall. We do this in relationships all the time, just whether it's romantic, friend, family. Our communication and kind of EQ, emotional intelligence, is lacking in the sense of we try to formulate what other people's intentions are constantly, and then we decide to choose the one usually that invokes the most emotional response from us. Like, if they meant this, okay, but if they meant this, oh, they better not have meant it that way. And then you ruminate, or then you, like, you know, you go on this train of thought of like, oh man, if they meant it like that, like, oh, this is what I would say, or this is how I would feel about, and then you start associating and attaching these feelings to a hypothetical from a real statement. So you really need to ask yourself, am I interpreting this incorrectly? And if I am, first, why, because usually you don't interpret things negative right off the bat unless you are in some sort of negative state to begin with, or some vulnerable state. So first you kind of got to ask yourself, why did I interpret it this way? What evidence do I have that this person meant it this way? Again, you can simply just ask them, like, hey, you said this thing, or you said it this way, or is this what you meant? Was this your intent? Because that's how I took it, and I don't want to feel this way about it. Yeah, just simply ask them. An example for me is I was at work one day, and I worked with neurodivergent children, which, if you don't know, is like autistic spectrum disorder. I don't even want to say disorder, but autism spectrum. And we're working in a clinical setting, so there's other kids there as well in certain environments. And someone who I've had many conversations with, like, we worked together for like 7 months, 8 months, and we had always like good conversation. We were always nice, everything else. I was with an older kid who, at times can be a little bit harder to control because he's older. He's taller than me, and he has a lot of set personalities, and so we went to kind of a open space, and there were little kids, but he was actually playing, not like he was, playing well with the littler kids. He wasn't being rough or aggressive or anything. But then those kids had left, and there was another older kid there, and they wanted to do some peg each other with like a big old medicine ball. So it wasn't going to hurt them necessarily. We try to lay rules and stuff. But like my goal as the behavioral interventionist is I'm trying to see how well he listens to instructions, follows rules, and if there's a social boundary or a social cue of like the other kid is no longer enjoying it or whatever, like have him recognize that. Be like, hey, does he look like someone right now that is having a good time, or whatever the case would be? And you ask that in both the negative and the positive. If it doesn't look like he has a good time, you ask him. If the kid is laughing and smiling, you can still ask him, like, does he look like he's enjoying his time? Because you don't only want to ask those questions when the answer is negative, because then they'll associate, oh, all I have to do is answer the negative to what he's asking. But anyways, that's a little divergent nuance. So they were being a little loud, and the person that I've talked to, had great conversation with, she came up very irritated and was like, what goals are you guys working on right now? Like, boom, like vocal pattern expression was forward. It wasn't soft. It was boom. Like, what are y'all doing? What goals are you working on? So I was like, we're working on goals, trust me, listening skills, this, that, the other, whatever I explained. And she was like, okay, whatever. She leaves. 5 minutes later, one of our managers, supervisors, comes up and asks the same question. So I know, because of deducing, that my answers weren't sufficient for her. So she told the boss and was like, I don't know what they're doing. They're not following rule there, but whatever she said, I can only speculate as to what was specifically said. And of course, in that moment, my brain took it as she messaged her and was like, they're out of control. They don't know what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. So my take was that she's questioning my capabilities. So I got a little in like mentally heated. I didn't express it because I recognize like this pisses me off, but I don't know if I'm pissed off for the right reasons right now. So I'm not gonna say anything yet. But like my blood was boiling because I personally take pride in my job and my capabilities at whatever job I'm doing. Once I'm confident in it, if I'm new, of course, I criticize, like, you know, let me get better. But I'd already been there a year. I've worked with this kid for a long time, so it's like I knew what I was working on, and I had a handle of the situation. But I felt that that was questioned, and in an aggressive way. So yeah, I was a little heated, but I kept it cool. And I was like, oh yeah, no, we're doing this, we're doing that, working on this. I'm making sure he realizes this, and collecting data on it, and blah blah blah. And the supervisor was like, oh, okay, just, you know, make sure you're being safe. I was like, yeah, no worries. So she didn't have any issue with it, and walked off. 2 days later, I at a slow point, I asked, I was like, hey, do you mind if we have a conversation? He was like, sure. And I was like, all right. So you can tell me if you want to go further with this conversation or not, but what this is going to be about is I felt a couple days ago our interaction was not a good one. You know, the way that it went down really upset me, like pissed me off. And I'm just trying to get to the bottom of why I was pissed and if that was your intention. And I was like, are you okay with this conversation? He was like, sure. Okay. Do you want to lead with how I feel? Like, do you want me to lead with how I felt about the situation, or do you want to lead with your intention of the situation? He was like, you can lead. Like, all right. So I explained the whole thing. I was like, you know, I was working on this, blah blah blah, and then the way you came up was very aggressive. It wasn't questioning to try and figure out actually what's going on necessarily. It felt like you were questioning me, because there were two other, you know, adults there, two other BIs there, but I was the one that you were like, what is this, blah blah blah. And I was like, so the way that you expressed it, very short, direct, boom, and aggressive, put me on the defensive real quick. And I got, like, I was flustered, and I don't know what your intent was, because how I felt is you were questioning my capabilities, you were doing this, blah blah blah. I went down the list, and I was like, and then not but 5 minutes later, after I gave you my answers, you told the supervisor. So I also perceive that as you not thinking my answers were sufficient, that you didn't trust my answers, which to me, I equate that you don't trust me. You don't trust my capabilities, and that pissed me off. I was like, but I just want to make sure that these feelings are justified by your intent, or what else was going on. And there was a lot more nuance to it, but her side of the conversation was like, no, it was just, you know, I'm sorry it came out that way. I was frustrated because of this and that, because of other factors. Like, she was dealing with other things, and it came out against me, because you can't, you know, give that aggression or that whatever to a neurodivergent child or to their parent. So she's like, I was upset, and I vented that frustration out in those words. And I forgot what her explanation was for the supervisor thing, but, you know, in her mind wasn't, I'm questioning him. It's, I just want the supervisor to know what's going on, like the situation. So, you know, we ended the conversation amicably. We were like, okay, cool, like, we're good. But if I didn't communicate that, like, I could feel it, even though I had the understanding of my emotions and a plan of, like, let's see if these emotions are justified. Even with that understanding, as the days went on, before we could have that talk, before I was able to have that discussion, whew, I was coming up with scenarios in my brain. I'm sitting here driving to work, and I'm like, oh, if this bitch does this or she says this, like, I'm not gonna do anything, but my brain is like, oh, like, I'm just not gonna talk to her again, like, blah blah blah, like, I'm just gonna avoid her like the plague. I'm not gonna be like rude to her, but I'm not gonna smile, like, I'm not gonna give her any niceties anymore. Like, my brain, it's just going down this spiral. And that's with me understanding that these feelings are potentially, well, they're currently not justified, but they could potentially just be overall not justified. So my perception of the situation wasn't the reality of the situation. And I knew that at least there was a potential or high likelihood of that, but I still ruminated on it. I still was like, I would think about it. I'm driving and I just get heated all over again, like, who does she think she is? Questioning me. Bah, 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 bah. Like, it's stupid, like, egotistical or defensive thought process that I was able to rationalize and actually, like, okay, like, let's get to the bottom of it. So it's the reason I give that example is as maybe a template for somebody to know how to have that conversation. Not everybody's going to be accepting of it, and not everybody's going to want to have that conversation. But, you know, again, overall, I would say, I think a lot of research and a lot of other, like, psychologists and you know, people with experience in these situations would say is, thrown out a number, but 90, 95 or more % of the time that someone says something that you interpret as a slight wasn't intended in that way at all. But your perception of that is more powerful to you than the reality of the situation. And you could either not care about it and just whatever anyways, or if, you know, it sparks an emotion and you want to get to the bottom of it instead of ruminating on it, because I'm sure everybody has experienced a negative thought leading into a spiral of hypotheticals and how you're going to talk to that person, and you have this, like, speech ready. And even if the situation ends as you thought it would, your speech you formulated typically gets thrown out the window because your emotions are high. It's just, there's no benefit, you know. Well, there's not no benefit. There's not a lot of benefit. But yeah, so instead of that, you can, if you have an emotional response to it, you just try to approach that person that did it to you. If it's some Joe Schmo random person that said some offhanded thing that you took offensive, I mean, me, I'd be like, well, okay, who cares? I don't have to be in the same room. I don't have to ever be in the same area, environment, anything with that person ever again. So I'm not going to give a random stranger power over my emotions. But through that, if there is still offense taken, then I have to dig deeper and understand why does this person's random opinion affect me? Because the person themselves, they don't affect me. So does their comment affect me because I see a nugget of truth or insecurity in what they're saying? And then that leads me into a different mindset, a different path, because now I can dissect, like, why this thing upset me. Because it's not that person typically. I mean, it's not that person. It's because there's something that they said that struck something in you, whether it was an insecurity, whether it's just something that, you know, you've been depressed about, or some like latent thing that you haven't even accessed. Like, there's a reason you got upset from someone who doesn't matter. And it's not because they matter, it's because what they said mattered to you. Why? Why does what they said matter to you? So, you know, I can understand for sure when I hear other people talk and someone's like, oh, this person said this, and then somebody else's answer is, are they important to your life? No? Then who gives a shit? Sorry for my language. It's like, who cares? Who cares? That person has no relevance to you. And then they brush off the other person's feelings, which, you know, the truth of the matter is, potentially, the potential truth of the matter is that person isn't offended by some Joe Schmo necessarily because that Joe Schmo is Joe. It's what they said resonated with them in an uncomfortable way. So it's not that they're necessarily allowing some other person to dictate their emotions or their lives. It's they found some most likely false truth of insecurity that someone's been talking down to themselves about. And when they hear it from someone else, it kind of validates their negative emotions or negative feelings. And it makes them think, like, if you don't have a full understanding about what's going on in your own mind and your own emotionality, the blame is solely on that person. Like, oh, that person's a dick, or like, screw that person, or blah blah blah, or like, or maybe you take it not in the aggressive way, and then or you take it in the more like depressed way, and I'm crying, or I'm upset, or now my mood is just like, and the way to kind of grow from that, and now we're gonna probably start switching from the perception versus reality into kind of getting out of a funk, is you have to realize why you feel that way. It's not as simple as, well, Joe Schmo said that. It's, okay, well, they said that. Why does it upset you? What truth or fallacy in your falsity in your mind did they hit that makes you feel that way? You know, if, like right now, I am in the worst shape of my life. You know, I tore a quadricep, so I haven't been able to run, play football, do squats, anything like that, for about 4 months, and I've put on some weight. Me personally, I wouldn't take offense to someone calling me chubby, but if I did, it's because I've told myself that. For me, or I'm afraid to acknowledge that that's where I'm at now. You know, I've been a fit person for, I could probably say, the entirety of my life, except for now. So admitting to myself that's not who I am currently might be hurtful. So it's either it's because I've told myself that, and I've ridiculed myself for that, and then now they're validating the ridicule that I give myself, and it makes me feel like poo-poo. Or it's potentially it's a truth that I have been denying because that's not who I want to be, and that's not who I have been. So it pisses me off because of whatever other factors. Like, well, you know, this is just where I'm at right now, or like, oh, like, who are you, and like deflecting or whatever the case may be. But if I get an emotional response to that, I have to figure out why. And is it something I want to change, am willing to change, or can change? If the answer is no to I don't want to change it, I'm not willing to change it, and I just can't change it, then I have to be like, well, then what else? Like, why else would that have upset me? Because if I'm fully comfortable and not willing to change, don't want to change, can't change my gut, then why am I offended about someone talking about my gut? And again, that can be dissected even further and be like, well, I get offended to any personal attack, whether or not I like, regardless of what they say, there's not a particular thing that I'm self-conscious about that they would make fun of. It's just in general, I have a adversity to being made fun of. Or again, you have to think about the society or who's talking or what they truly meant. And like, you know, if I'm in Asia, Japan, China, and someone's like, oh yeah, chunky white guy, they don't mean it necessarily in like that offensive way that in America you would take it. So you kind of have to be like, okay, did they actually mean this to be hurtful and mean, or are they just making an observation? Because observationally, I got a little bit of a gut now. It's not big, you know, but it's not the flat six-pack I used to have just a year ago, you know. And I don't take offense to it because I know personally that I can, like, once this heals more, I can get back in the gym to a degree and do enough to be fine. I know this is just where I'm at currently. I've accepted that situation, but I don't want that acceptance to be complacency. And that's my own personal struggle right now. Is I know I have the tendency to become a very complacent individual because, you know, I adapt to situations, or I understand that this is just where I'm at currently. It's not a depiction of who I will be and who I was. This is just the current state of things. But sometimes that leads to inaction. And that inaction will prevent me from getting out of a rut. Because I'm like, well, you know I have the capability. I know I can do it. You know, and I've personally been a victim of procrastination a lot, but I use victim lightly as I got reinforced through procrastination, which is terrible, but a blessing. I procrastinate everything. I procrastinated doing this. You know, I've told myself in my stream, like, I've wanted to do this for months. Like, I had this idea to do this for months. Nothing was stopping me from just turning the camera on, which I do almost every day currently, streaming. Nothing stopped me from that but myself, but procrastination. And again, I've gotten rewarded personally through that procrastination because I do all the things I want to do instead, wait to the last minute, but I've typically had the capability of getting it done in that last minute and doing it well enough to maintain a 4.0. So I had no repercussions, which didn't force any change because I was reinforced. I understand that, but I know how hard it can be to make that change when there's no true adversity at the time to force the change. So my health, like my fear for myself and staying in a rut is I will stay into this rut because I believe I can get out of it whenever I want, like the smoker who's like, I could quit smoking whenever I want, I just don't want to. That mentality is going to get to a point where I actually develop a health problem. I actually develop some adverse thing that forces that change, but was completely unnecessary to begin with. So that's kind of my personal fear with being in a rut and complacency and stuff like that. For people who can't accept their surroundings or can't accept where they're at, if you use that as fuel and motivation, you're actually at a much better place than someone like me who can have acceptance and understanding and adaptability and whatever else of a scenario or of a situation, and find the joy or find the acceptance within that reality. I wish I didn't have as much of that as I do, but I know it just takes, for most people, just baby steps. I've done it both ways, so I know both ways technically work to a degree with me, but overall, making a drastic change isn't sustainable. It can be beneficial, you can see the rewards from it, you can be like, wow, like last week we talked about kind of these baby steps of change, with the example of diets. When people go on these, just eating like crap, overweight, health issues, whatever, even if it's not overweight, whatever, but they're just eating like crap, they're feeling like crap, and I need a change. And then they cut everything that they viewed as bad. They cut that all out and go just to the good. I'm gonna mute real quick while they're right there. All right. I don't even remember exactly where I was. I started looking at an article. So I'll just retrace what I remember. I have that acceptance portion that's not. Oh, baby steps. There we go. When people do those diets and they just drastically cut out everything bad and they don't allow any leeway, they don't slowly introduce the good and slowly weed out the bad to a point where you can have some of the bad as long as most of it's the good, but you can still reward yourself. Those diets aren't sustainable. Some people, some outliers, of course, find success and can do that. Like, oh, I've been this, I cold turkey did this, and I've been it for 5 years. That's great. That's not everybody. Most people don't have that discipline, that work ethic, that drive, whatever. So when they do that, they're doing it solely off of motivation and off of willpower, and those are finite mental resources that will run out if you do not build a habit or make it rewarding enough to be sustainable. So for me to get out of this rut, or for another individual, the basic layout is just start with baby steps. Understand first, again, I'm always about the fundamental, the basis. Understand why you're in the rut to begin with. What is going on in your life that is making you feel depressed? Is it social? Are you socially unhappy, you don't have a friend circle, you don't have someone who you feel like is there for you. And let's not get it twisted in that regard. A lot of the times when you are depressed, you have people who are there for you, but you don't have confidence that they are. But that's your perception. The reality is they are there for you. You have outlets, but when you get into a depressive state, sometimes you just throw those out. You're like, no, nobody's there for me. I'm by myself. When there's a lot of truth to, you've kind of created that world, but you have to figure out why. Because your words, your thoughts, they have actual scientific data proving that they have power over you. You know, if and it's hard to change. You know, if I've told myself 50,000 times that I'm a piece of shite and I'm not worth anything right now, whatever derogatory thing you want to say, if I've repeated that to myself for so long, someone else saying a contradictory thing and be like, no, you're awesome, or what are you talking about? You're like one of the most blah 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 people I know. Hearing it once isn't going to override the 50,000 times I told somebody something. I've heard my name, my parents gave me my name, I've internalized my name, I've repeated my name, I think of this as my name for ever, since my existence. If someone were to tell me or give me a different name, I'd be like, my name is this. Like, that's my name is who I am. It's not, but like that's me. That's the label of who I am. Like, I'm Eric. And it would take me a lot of repetition to believe that my name is different. To truly believe that my name is different. And this is a terrible example, but that's kind of the same. Not even kind of. That's the same as like your emotional state. That's why words of affirmation work. That's why talking to yourself or writing positive affirmations repetitively, consistently, every day are proven to work. Because you're creating this cognitive dissonance. Whatever one is the original cognitive dissonance, because dissonance is usually not the truth of the situation. You've just repeated it to yourself or have heard it so much that is now what you believe the reality to be. Excuse me. So you create this cognitive dissonance, and it takes cognitive dissonance to get out of that. So a lot of these, treatments, protocols that people hear about, oh, you're depressed, get a better diet, go stick your face outside for 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then 15 minutes, make sure you're hydrating properly, and give yourself words of affirmation. Find what you know yourself to be good at, or what you like yourself to be good at, and reaffirm yourself in that. And reverse. When you have a thought of like, oh, I suck, don't necessarily be like, oh, I'm the best. But either have growth mindset and be like, instead of, oh, I suck, I need to get better. Or, oh, I suck and I'm really not that bad. I just suck in comparison to whatever thing I'm comparing myself to. A professional. Like if I'm playing Counter-Strike or League of Legends and I do a dumb play and I'm like, I suck. I only suck in comparison to other things, right? Like, now that's again kind of a loose example, but if I want to get better, I think to myself, why am I saying I suck? Like, what did I do so I don't do that again? That's kind of that growth mindset. I suck, but I can get better. But the words of affirmation is like, you find the things that you are good at, you reaffirm yourself in those, like, you know what? I'm good at this. I'm good at this. I'm good at this. And then some of the negative things that you think about yourself, you lighten that negativity or you reverse it entirely. Be like, me, I could, like, I'm a lazy POS for now. I'm a lazy POS, or I was. That's not who I'm going to be. I will be determined. And that's, again, the affirmation is I will be, opposed to when you already know you're good at something, I am. So you want to change I'm fat, if that's the one of the things that is depressive to you, into but I will be healthy. I don't care about being skinny, being fit, being ripped. I will be healthy. I'm a procrastinator, but I will work on it and I will turn things in a day before they're due. And if I keep telling myself that, if I keep repeating it to myself, eventually I'll change. I'll do things in a better way. But again, baby steps. If I told myself I'm a procrastinator, but now I'm going to turn things in the day that they're assigned, I might do that for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then something will come up, because it's life. Something will come up, and now I'm going to be off doing something else. And I'm like, well, the due date's not for a week. I'll push it back. I'll push it back. And then as soon as I do that once, and again get rewarded for doing all the things I wanted to do first, still getting it done on time, then I'm back into that. But if I'm like, you know what, no, like it's due Friday, I'm gonna treat it like it's due Thursday, because that's just one day. I can still procrastinate. Throughout the rest of the week, but I'm changing it by just a day, just an hour. If I turn it on the deadline, on the dot every day, maybe an hour before, maybe 2 hours before. All right, let's do 3 hours before. Same with going to the gym. You especially if you have no experience, you don't go to the gym and go ham the first day. Typically, you don't go ham for quite a while, because you don't even know what that is in the gym. You do baby steps. All right, I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm just going to walk on the treadmill for 10 minutes. Next week, I'm going to do 15 minutes. The next week, I'm going to start introducing some resistance training, whatever works for you. Calisthenics, weights, resistance bands, whatever. Just start introducing it, and you build on that. But you don't let your negative thought have that power to not go. That's a huge thing that our brains do, is you'll have an idea, good or bad, but in these examples, I'm just going to say the good idea. Like, I don't know how many times, me personally, and I'm sure other people, you wake up, you're like, look, I got to go to the gym today. Like, whatever the case is, I got to go. And 3 seconds later, oh, but I'm tired, or oh, but I don't want to be sore, or like, oh, I wanted to go to the beach in 2 days, and since I haven't been to the gym in like a month, I'm going to be super sore, so I'm not going to be able to enjoy the beach. So you know what? After the beach, that's when I'll start. I'll start after the beach day. Beach day happens, you have fun, then you're like, ah, damn, I need to get, I really need to go to the gym. I really gotta go to the gym. And then something else comes up. You're like, but then I'm gonna be sore, then I'm gonna do this. You have to just follow that initial thought of like, I need to go to the gym. Don't let that defense mechanism of your brain be like, but don't go. Like, you need to shut that down. But that takes baby steps. That takes you doing that for small things first, and I mean small. If you don't make your bed in the morning, when you wake up, it takes you 30 seconds, whatever time, start making it part of your routine to make your bed. And then if you don't brush your teeth like you should, you're like, no, I make my bed, I brush my teeth. Boom. Just those two simple things. And then you keep building off of that, because those are manageable steps that are creating positive habits. That is one way, and one strong way of helping kind of change where you are and in that rut. Because again, if I'm in a rut, I consider myself personally to be in a little bit of a rut because of circumstances. If I'm in a rut and I just try to do everything all at once, I'm like, no. I'm not doing these 5 things that I know will help me. I'm going to do all of these 5 things right now. That's only going to work as long as I'm motivated for it and it doesn't create a habit. And motivation is finite. It is draining. So I'm less likely to create those habits, those positive things through that. So to kind of recap in that spectrum, or that aspect, is when you're in a rut, to get out of it, baby steps are the most advisable. And it's just small stuff. But you have to find out and think about exactly what it is. And maybe not exactly, because that can be hard, but at least a roundabout thing of like, why am I in this rut? Why do I feel like crap? Why do I have no motivation? Give yourself a real assessment of, am I telling myself I'm a piece of shit? Am I telling myself I'm not worth it? Am I telling myself like I'll get it done later? Like what am I repeating to myself that is keeping me in this rut? Find out why. Make small steps to change that. Whether again it's just affirmations of, well, I tell myself I'm not worthy of a friendship, I'm not worthy of this, I'm a POS, I'm whatever. Well, when I say that or when I think that, let's change that. Let's, at first, just add an addendum. I'm a piece of shit, but I will become better. I'm out of shape, but I will become healthy. You're giving yourself that outlet, and then eventually you get rid of the I'm a piece of shit altogether, or I'm unhealthy altogether, and it turns into I'm becoming healthy. I'm becoming what I view as a more valuable person. And it's just it helps you find little successes. You know, working with neurodivergent children, this is just children, but there's not a lot of long-term thinking. So there's apparently this like I don't remember if it was an IQ test, but they might have labeled it as such. But for children, or how forward-thinking they are, or how instantaneous they are, that you ask your child, hey, you can have 1 cookie now, or if you wait X amount of time, you get more whatever of cookie. That's a supposed gauge of how forward-thinking your child is. And you know, neurodivergent children, especially in the earlier developments, they are very in the moment. Like, I don't care about 10 cookies tomorrow. You got a cookie in front of you right now. So it's that those quick rewards, and if you punish, which research has stated many times over now that like true punishment, at least I can't remember the terminology, but adding punishment, not removal punishment, which adding punishment is like if you do this bad thing, I'm adding spankings. I'm adding your grounded is kind of actually I can't believe I forgot the term, but like a withdrawal punishment. But punishment overall has been proven to not really be effective, especially like the physical punishments and stuff like that. I mean, I grew up getting whooped. I think I turned out okay, but that's not the norm necessarily. But the main thing is rewarding behavior. So it's redirection and then rewarding the positive behavior, and that builds momentum to achieve whatever goals they or you or whatever want. So you want to make sure that when you're getting out of a rut, whatever your goal is, your absolute goal, you need to break it down into manageable, attainable, measurable goals. So you can build momentum and you can feel rewarded throughout the process. That's another reason why I think doing a diet, just cold turkey, isn't sustainable. And that's just statistically speaking, it's not sustainable. Like most people who do a diet, I don't remember the exact numbers, so don't quote me on the numbers, but it's a large portion of the people who start a diet fall off 2 weeks, a month, 2 months. They fall off of it because it's just not sustainable. And so you need to just, again, something simple like, I don't make my bed. I'm gonna make my bed every day now. I'm gonna wake up, take the 20 seconds to have a clean looking bed. I don't drink enough water. So you know what? I'm gonna wake up. If I know I need to drink 96 ounces of water, but I drink 8 to none a day, I'm not just gonna go straight into drinking 96 ounces in a day. It's not part of it's a drastic change that I might follow for like 2 or 3 days and then fall off. But you know what I can do? I drink 0 to 8. All right, in the morning, I'm going to start with 8. And I'm going to, if I work at my desk all the time, I'm going to have a glass of water readily available at my desk. Because an interesting thing about desk work, I learned this from watching Healthy Gamer, the psychiatrist, is through his research, when you play a game or you're doing like desk job stuff and you're hyper focused, that suppresses your hunger and thirst. But if it's readily available, your body, your mind connection will tell you to have that sip. It'll tell you to eat that snack because it's not taking you away from the focus. It's just right here. Boom. And I'm so focused. So it's those little things like setting yourself up for success. So again, if my goal is to drink more water, I'm going to set myself up to have water more readily available for me. If it's to start going to the gym, I might not start with going to the gym, but at home, I might start with some light stretching. Get the body stretched out a little bit, loose and limber. And then I do that for like a week. And now I'm like, all right, I feel like my body is, I guess, get less achy. I feel a little better physically. Let me add some push-ups. Let me add some light body weight squats. Let me go further into the stretching, and instead of only stretching for like 20 minutes, let me do a full 30-minute, 45-minute yoga session, whatever the case may be. But you start with the baby steps. You get the reward from that, like, yep, I did my stretch today. Boom. Small, but I'm not. I'm getting out of being a piece of shit. I'm getting out of being unhealthy. I'm getting out of this rut. And this is how. This is the evidence of how I am getting out of it. Because before, when I'm in the rut, I was eating like fully like crap. I wasn't making my bed. I wasn't showering the way I should be. I wasn't drinking enough water. I wasn't doing this. I wasn't doing that. But now I can say with evidence that I am not in the same spot that I was 2 weeks ago. And now I can build momentum off of that. Now I can start doing more advanced things because I have a foundation and I've started developing and building a habit of these positive attributes, not attributes, positive things, so I can move forward. And again, I think perception versus reality, and kind of understanding situationally where you're at when you're in a rut, kind of, I mean, they all, like all of psychology to an extent goes hand in hand. All of, you know, the neurology, your chemicals, everything else, like there's different topics of discussion for that. We hit some of that last week, about like gut health, serotonin, transmitters, that kind of thing. Again, very surface level. If that's a topic that interests more people, then we can discuss that. But you know, you need to see what your perception of things are. What your perception is, Jesus. And what the potential reality actually is. Question your own perception, because our perceptions are built upon biases, they're built upon our experiences, they're built upon our traumas, and a lot of those perceptions are built in a defensive measure. You know, if I have relationship trauma, my perception of the whatever I'm attracted to might get skewed. And I might say things like, well, all women are this because of my experience with this. And now I have this defensive measure of like an expectation that whoever I start talking to is going to do what I think. And as soon as they even hit or flirt with that potential, boom, you shut down. You're like, yep, see, all men, all women, they're just this. When the reality is no, that's just your perception of things because of your experiences, which, you know, that's not like necessarily, I mean, it depends on who you want to be, but it's not necessarily like a negative thing, because again, your body, your mind has built up these defenses to protect you. But it's understanding like, oh, I'm just protecting myself right now. And what is it that I want in life? What is it what are the things that are actually important to me? Actually, truly, not just, I'm pissed off right now, so you know what, I'm like, I'll just be single the rest of my life. I don't give a shit. You're telling yourself that as a defensive measure to protect yourself from getting hurt. There are some people, of course, that are like, no, yeah, I don't care about a romantic relationship at all. And that's fine. But if you're not one of those people, you have to be truthful to yourself. Like, no, you know what, I do want these things. I want that relationship. I need to change my perception of things, how I perceive. I have to develop better communication styles. If I perceive to be slighted, I need to approach the situation and find its true intent. Hey, you said this thing, it made me feel this way. Is that how you meant it? Or don't even give them the how you meant it. Just like, hey, when you said this thing, I'm curious as to what you meant by that. Because I mean, this is getting into relationships, and we'll have better talks about that, on other sessions. But just quickly, one big mistake that overthinkers do, and not just overthinkers, but I'm just using that as an example, because it's more of a majority, is when someone does something to you, you think typically both sides of like, they did this maybe because they're actually a dick, or what I hope it is, because it's my boo, they didn't know they were doing it, or they were upset at something else. So when you give someone option A, option B, most of the time the person's going to pick the option that they know you want to hear. Don't give people options. Don't do it. Let someone think on their own. So instead of, why did you do this? Is it because of this or because of this? No. You did this thing, and I just want to understand why. Or I want to understand what your intent was. And then you just sit there. It's uncomfortable, but you sit there in silence, because they're going to formulate what they need to. And, you could start, it's touchy territory, but you could start dissecting and being like, oh, well, it took them like 4 minutes to answer, so they probably thought of all the scenarios and they thought about what I wanted to hear and blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, cool, that means it took them 4 minutes to answer, and you can maybe inaccurately come to that conclusion, but it's better than giving them that answer and then they answer instantaneously, because now you can convince yourself like, oh, that's what I was hoping for. When in reality, they could just not want to have this conversation. So they're like, yeah, you want to hear this, I'm going to tell you that. So don't give them that answer. You express how you feel. If you want, I mean, you should be like, hey, this upset me, this hurt me, this made me feel some type of way, and I'm just trying to better understand what you meant by that. But as someone who has done it a lot when I was younger, don't give people the answer to your question. Just don't. Let them answer it themselves. They'll either dig themselves a hole, or they'll give you the answer that you hoped for. But at least you know it's their answer, not the answer you hoped for. Anyways, that's back to relationships. We could discuss further on that, on different sessions, or if someone in chat or YouTube has question about stuff like that. So back to perception, reality, getting out of a rut is, you have to understand where you are, you have to understand how you're perceiving things, and is that accurate, and try and have an objective view. Subjective, I always get those mixed up. I shouldn't though. But an outer view of like, if I were someone else watching this happen, would I think that person meant it in that way? Or am I just putting my own personal biases, personal perceptions into this and be like, no, this is what they meant, when they could have meant something completely different, or not meant anything at all. So you understand that. Then you dig deeper as to understanding why you have these perceptions, why you have these walls, why you have these defense mechanisms. Try to break those down. If you're also comorbidity in a rut, it's not really comorbidity, but in a rut on top of that, then that helps you break down why you're in a rut. Like, oh, well, I'm perceiving these things as slights because I'm not happy with where I'm at in these regards of my life, and it's preventing me from excelling, it's preventing me from breaking through, it's preventing me from growing. Like, okay, why am I feeling this way? What things do I need to start changing and gradually change them? And as I've said before, if it's something truly traumatic or something that you just can't get over the hump, I would always recommend actually seeing a real therapist. Maybe in 2.5, 3 years, come see me when I'm actually licensed. But get the guidance, get the help, get the protocols to start making those positive changes in your life. And yeah, I think, there's still so much more to talk about. As always, it's a never-ending conversation and discussion when it comes to being in a rut, why you're there, perception, reality, protocols, ways to improve your life, improve your mindset. But every little thing, in my opinion, when it comes to getting growth or attaining growth, getting better, anything like that, it comes down to understanding yourself, truthfully analyzing and assessing where you are, what's going on in your life, what do you want to change, what do you wish was better, and creating your own list of goals, attainable goals, mini goals, and a large goal that you can track progress, that you can look back on and be like, wow, I'm not at that place anymore. One of the biggest reasons that I would actually say document it and track it is, I know when I go to the gym, I'm looking at myself in the mirror pretty much every day. I'm not seeing where I was 2 months ago and comparing it to where I'm at now and being like, damn, like I've gotten good, gotten better just in those 2 months. No, I'm judging it every day, so it's such a gradual thing that day by day I'm like, damn, am I getting bigger? Like, am I getting smaller? Am I trimming? Like, it's hard to notice those gradual changes when you witness the gradual change every day. So have documentation, have something that you can compare where you were and where you are now, and don't judge yourself on expectation of where you think you should be, because you know what, while you are the theoretical professional of your own body, your own mind, your own whatever, you don't know, you can't successfully gauge where you would accurately be in 2 months, in 3 months. There are so many factors that aren't just up to you that can skew that goal. So while you should have a goal, an overall goal, like I want to be 185 and I want veins to be popping out, baby. Okay, cool. But if you're 4 months in and you've been getting these good results, but you're not there yet, you can't compare to what you want to be to where you're at, and you have to understand your personality type. There are personality types that will correctly assess where they're at and where they want to be and be like, I'm not there yet, I gotta work harder. And they use that as fuel motivation, and they have that discipline, and it gets them there. But when you see these Instagram people, these, David Goggins, and people are like, shut the fuck up, pussy, like, blah, 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 yada, 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 just do it. They literally have a different wiring, a different neurological, like, brain structure, not really, but, like, they mentally work differently. They have that personality trait that's like, I'm not there yet. They want that comparison. And they're like, so I'm going to bust my ass till I get there because I'm not accepting defeat. I'm not accepting failure. But they've they didn't just wake up and start that way. I mean, even David Goggins, he talks about he was fat, he was whatever, he was unhealthy, he was this. He didn't have that innate discipline. He created it. But now, you know, I don't want to dog the guy. I don't even know the guy, but I'm just using that as an example of someone who's like, no, just shut up. You do this, you do that, you do this, blah blah blah. Don't be a wuss. Don't be this. And it's like, that's cool and all, and like that's where you're at. But it took you some steps to get to that point. So looking at someone who's overweight and being like, stop being overweight, I did it. Okay, well, you gradually did it. Even if you're one of those people that cold turkey did it, cool. The everyday person, the people I'm talking to, whoever, you can't have that comparison, that expectation. That was built through their discipline. They didn't wake up one morning and just become that. It's fully possible they woke up one morning and started the changes of the rest of their life. That's fully possible. If anything, that's what happens naturally. Like, not natural, but like with that. But they didn't just... Most people don't have that innate discipline and work ethic. They just don't. And comparing yourself to where someone is who put in a lot of work to where you're at now, it's not beneficial. Even comparing yourself to where you yourself want to be, if that is genuine fuel for you, do it. But if you look at it and it's depressing, or it's like, I've been putting in so much work but I'm not where I want to be, why am I even doing this? Then you have to understand that about yourself and remove as much as you can, or as soon as you have that thought, change that thought and be like, no, I've been doing great in comparison to where I was. That's the most important part. And it's not just an assessment of, like, I'm using health and weight because it's an easy example, but it's also mental stuff. Again, like, if you don't make your bed, if you don't do this, if you don't do that, not that that's like an indicator of, well, I think some studies say it is, but an indicator of like success and satisfaction of life. But, you know, as an indicator of yourself, you could be like, well, I used to never make my bed. I used to let dishes pile up. I used to, not shower like I should, or whatever the case would be. But now I do. When it comes to weight, sometimes your weight can fluctuate. Sometimes, like when I work out, when I haven't in a while, I can visually see me getting a little bit smaller, my pants fitting a little bit better, but I'm staying at the same weight. And that's just because muscle weighs more than fat. Muscle has a higher density, so it weighs more. So I wouldn't even judge your success on one measure. I would have it on, how do you feel? What have you been doing? Because if I wasn't going to the gym at all and I'm the same weight but I'm going to the gym more, whether I see it or not, my body is healthier. Just 100%, unless you're injuring yourself. My body is healthier. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If I wasn't doing physical activity and I wasn't, tracking to some measure what I was eating, and now I do, I don't care what the scale says. I don't care what looking in the mirror says. Physiologically, scientifically, I know I'm becoming healthier. And that's where I need to be basing it on. It's not the necessarily results. It's tracking the improvements of habit. Because I had bad habits before, or unhealthy habits before, and now, whether or not, whatever, I can look back and say these are unequivocally more positive habits that are going to better my life in the long term, and keep that and move forward with it. and that is one protocol, one way of getting out of a rut. Understanding it, understanding where you are, why you are, being having humility, you know, understanding what you lack in, being truthful to that, and then devising a plan, but make sure that the plan is malleable, that you can change it, alter it as time progresses, because your needs will change, your body will change, your mind will change. So tailor it to where you're at now, to what you think would be better. Ideally do research to make sure it actually is better. You know, if I'm like, well, I eat Twinkies every day, but I think if I switch to Little Debbie's Swiss rolls, they're slightly lower in calories. Like, okay. Objectively, that's healthier. But let's make sure that's still gradual changing to something even actually healthier. But again, even that's baby steps. Baby steps, you know? If you know you have that sugar addiction, don't cut it out entirely, because then you will go through withdrawals. It will drain your willpower and motivation more, and you won't be able to develop the discipline and work ethic and habits to make long-lasting change. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that was my TED Talk. If anybody out there does view this, and they have some insight, or they have some key takeaway or whatever, like, that's what this is for. My goal is to just promote, you know, mental health. You know, I was gonna say a healthy mind, but that's the same thing. You have insight on dubious things. What's up, Nub? But I mean, I'm gonna, I guess, close out now. We're almost at the 2-hour mark, and yeah, you know, hopefully, you know, this just helps any one person. That's satisfaction to me. Even if it doesn't, again, I'm using this also as a measure for myself. As I'm learning more, as I'm progressing, and as I start becoming a therapist and psychologist, or possibly psychologist, I gotta decide that, you know, this is one of my measures of where I was, where I will be or am at whatever point in time. So even if this is just for myself, hey, then it's for myself. But ideally, you know, we're out here to have discussions, to have an open space, to talk about things, and to grow, be more, have better mental health, physical health in general. And yeah, so again, disclaimer, nothing that I have said is my advice and therapy, because I'm not licensed. It's like, this is not financial advice, but it's just discussion, you know, discussion from articles, experience, just learning, and eventually, hopefully, more discourse with people who just want to talk about stuff like this, you know. And you know, maybe Nub one day will open up and talk about his life outside of being sick right now, which I hope you're feeling better, by the way, bud. Yeah, so that's where I will close it with. Next week, 1 p.m., 3 p.m. Pacific time. I'll have to think of another 1 or 2 topics to have my own little lectures on until we get some more people to actually have more discourse, more conversation. So until that point, it'll just be, I guess, me TED talking. Until that point. 3 you'll mention after I'm done with this. Oh boy. Games, conspiracies. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. for this portion of my stream. I'll be back Thursday, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Outside of that, this stream is, I just play video games whenever I'm streaming for the most part, but I'm always open for discussion, even if I'm playing a video game. Just these Thursday sessions are specifically towards that. But my stream is always open for any sort of discussion like this, even while I'm playing video games. The main reason I stream isn't to stream me playing the video games, it's for the conversation and the discussions. Especially those with on tune-up. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Hopefully I was able to, you know, assist in some manner. And yeah. Thank you all for watching. Adios.